The morning sun cast long shadows across the golden fields of Kepler 442b. As Elder Mirren Voss walked through her people's greatest achievement, the Villani had turned this once barren world into a paradise of endless crops that could feed a dozen star systems. Tall grain stalks swayed in the gentle breeze, their purple heads heavy, the seeds that contained more nutrition than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Mirren smiled as she watched. Young Villani children playing between the crop rows, their large, gentle eyes sparkled with joy as they chased small flying insects that helped pollinate their plants. Villani had lived in peace for over 300 years since they first arrived on this world. They had no weapons, no armies, and no enemies. Why would they need such things when they could grow food that made even the most hostile species willing to trade fairly? The communication device on Myron's wrist buzzed softly. She pressed the smooth surface and heard the worried voice of her assistant, Jorik. "Elder Voss, please come to the central dome immediately. We are receiving strange signals from the outer system." Mirren felt a cold touch of fear in her stomach. Strange signals usually meant visitors, and visitors meant change. The Villani preferred their quiet life of farming and research. She hurried toward the massive dome that housed their main settlement, her soft footsteps making no sound on the organic pathways that grew naturally from there. Bioengineered ground cover inside the dome. Dozens of Villani scientists worked at their curved workstations. Their technology was beautiful and alive, grown rather than built.
Wow.
Screens made of modified plant tissue displayed data in soft, glowing colors. Everything was designed to work in harmony with nature. Jorik met her at the entrance. As usually, calm face showed clear signs of stress. "Elder, the signals are not from traders or explorers. These are warships, and they are moving very fast toward our world." Myron's heart began to beat faster. "How many ships?" "Our sensors show at least 50 vessels, possibly more. They will reach our planet in less than 6 hours." The Elder moved quickly to the main communication station. The screens showed dots of light moving through space toward their peaceful world. Each dot represented a ship larger than anything the Villani had ever built. These were not the small, efficient vessels that traders used. These were built for war. "Have they responded to our welcome messages?" Mirren asked. "No, Elder. They ignore all our attempts to communicate. But we have identified their species from the ship designs. They are Drachnari." The name sent fear through every Villani in the dome. Everyone in this part of the galaxy knew about the Drachnari Empire. They were conquerors who took worlds by force and enslaved or destroyed the populations they found. The Drachnari were everything the Villani were not: violent, aggressive, and cruel. "Why would they come here?" Mirren whispered. "We have nothing they want except food, and we trade that freely with anyone who asks." Jorik's voice was quiet and sad. "Elder, I have been studying their past conquests. The Drachnari do not come for resources. They come for sport. They enjoy destroying peaceful civilizations. It makes them feel powerful." Mirren closed her eyes and tried to think. The Villani had no weapons that could fight warships. They had no army because they had never needed one. Their only defense was their dome shields, and those were designed to protect against storms and radiation, not military weapons. "Send a message to all the settlements," she ordered. "Tell everyone to gather in the main domes and activate all defensive systems. Maybe if we show them we are not a threat, they will leave us alone." But even as she spoke, Mirren knew it was hopeless. The Drachnari were famous for their cruelty. They would not be satisfied with surrender. 3 hours later, the Drachnari fleet entered orbit around Kepler 442b. The ships were dark and ugly, covered in spikes and weapons that looked like metal teeth. They moved through space like hungry predators surrounding their prey. The first attack came without warning. Beams of red energy struck the northern agricultural dome, cutting through the protective barriers like they were made of paper. The dome collapsed, crushing thousands of acres of crops and the Villani who tended them. "They are destroying our food production," Jorik cried out as more energy beams struck other domes around the planet. Mirren watched in horror as her people's lifework was burned away in seconds. Each dome that fell meant thousands of her people were dying, Adrakine were not even trying to take prisoners. They were simply killing everything they found. Send out the emergency signal, she ordered with tears in her large eyes. Broadcast on all frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that we need help. Elder, there is no one close enough to help us. The nearest military force is weeks away. Then, we send the message anyway. Maybe someone will hear it. Maybe someone will remember that we existed. Jorik nodded and began working at his station. His fingers moved quickly over the living controls, sending a desperate message into the void of space. This is Elder Miran Voss of the Volani people on Kepler 44b. We are under attack by the Draknari Empire. Our domes are falling. Our people are dying. We have no weapons to defend ourselves. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We have lived in peace for 3 centuries. We have never harmed anyone. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help, we are running out of time. The message broadcast continuously as more domes fell around the planet. The Draknari seemed to be taking their time, enjoying the destruction they were causing. They could have destroyed the entire planet in minutes, but they preferred to watch their victims suffer. Captain Rex Morrison was drinking coffee in his command chair aboard the human starship Retribution when the message reached his communication systems. The bridge was quiet during the night shift, with only a few officers monitoring the various stations around the room. Captain, called Lieutenant Torres from the communications console. We are receiving a distress signal from the Kepler system, audio only, but it sounds urgent. Rex set down his cup and listened to the desperate voice of Elder Miran Voss. The pain in her words was clear even through the translation systems. This was not a political conflict or a trade dispute. This was genocide. How far are we from there? Location? Rex asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, sir? Rex stood up and walked to the tactical display. The Kepler system showed as a small dot on the 3-dimensional map. He had heard of the Volani people before. They were farmers and scientists who sold their surplus crops to anyone who needed food. They had never been involved in any conflicts. Send a message to Fleet Command, Rex ordered. Tell them we have a code red humanitarian crisis in the Kepler system. Request permission to respond with full force. Sir, our orders are to patrol this sector. We are not authorized to engage in foreign conflicts. Rex turned to face his crew. These were good people who had joined the human fleet to protect innocent lives. He could see in their faces that they wanted to help just as much as he did. We go without permission, he said quietly. Bring us about and set course for Kepler for 4-B. Maximum speed. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They all knew that disobeying orders could end their careers. But they also knew that doing nothing would end innocent lives. Aye, sir, Torres replied. Course set. We will reach the system in 17 hours. As the Retribution turned toward the Kepler system, Rex looked at the tactical display showing the location of the Draknari fleet. The enemy had 50 ships, while he had only 1. But Rex Morrison had something the Draknari had never faced before. He had trained his entire life to fight monsters. The Draknari War Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the burning domes. Below on Kepler 44b, his reptilian face showed satisfaction as another agricultural center collapsed under his weapons fire. The Volani were running around like frightened insects, just as he expected. Commander, his tactical officer reported, we have destroyed 60% of their food production. The remaining settlements are sending surrender messages. Vex's yellow eyes gleamed with cruel pleasure. Ignore their surrender. Continue the bombardment. I want to see how long these plant eaters can survive without their precious crops. The Draknari had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Every species they encountered fell quickly once they realized the Draknari enjoyed causing. Fear was their greatest weapon, and they used it well. Sir, the communications officer called out nervously, I am detecting a hyperspace signature approaching the system. Someone is coming. Vex turned toward the main screen. It's probably more Volani fleeing in cargo ships. Target them when they arrive. I want no survivors to spread tales of our victory. But as the hyperspace distortion grew larger, Vex began to feel concerned. The energy signature was much too big for a cargo vessel. Something massive was about to arrive in his system, the space around. Kepler 44 to be suddenly filled with light as 200 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Drachnary bridge crew stared in shock at the tactical display showing ship after ship appearing on their sensors. "What species is this?" Vex demanded. "I have never seen ship designs like these." His intelligence officer worked frantically at his station. "Commander, these appear to be human vessels. That is impossible. Humans are a young species from the Outer Rim. They should not have this many warships." Vex studied the formation on his screen. The human ships were arranged in a pattern he had never seen before. Instead of the typical battle line that most species used, they had formed a three-dimensional web around his fleet. It looked like the hunting formation of a pack of predators. "Human ships, this is War Commander Vex of the Drachnary Empire, are interfering with our lawful conquest of this system. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." The reply came quickly in a calm, cold voice. "Drachnary Fleet, this is Admiral Stonecrusher of the Terran Federation. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. Surrender now, and prepare to be boarded, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet." Vex laughed at the ridiculous demand. "You have 200 ships. Human, have only 50. But each of my vessels is 3 times the size of yours. You cannot threaten me. Size does not matter, Commander. What matters is that you picked the wrong species to attack today." Ah! Before Vex could respond, the human fleet opened fire. But instead of the typical energy weapons that most species used, the humans fired solid projectiles that moved faster than anything the Drachnary had ever seen. The kinetic rounds struck the Drachnary shields and punched through them like they were made of cloth. "Shields are failing," the tactical officer shouted. "These projectiles are moving at impossible velocities." Vex could not understand what was happening. The shields were designed to stop the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy. How could simple metal projectiles penetrate them so easily? What the Drachnary did not know was that human weapons were designed for a different purpose. On Earth, humans had faced predators with thick armor and tough hides. They had learned to hunt massive creatures that could crush them with a single blow. Human weapons were built to punch through the strongest natural armor that evolution could create. The human ships moved in ways that confused the Drachnary gunners. Instead of flying in straight lines like civilized species, they twisted and rolled through space like wild animals. Their unpredictable movements made them almost impossible to target. "Return fire," Vex ordered. "Destroy those primitive vessels." The Drachnary ships began firing their plasma cannons, but the humans seemed to anticipate every shot. They moved just before the weapons fired, as if they could sense the attacks coming. The few shots that did connect were absorbed by human shields that were designed differently than anything the Drachnary had seen. "Commander." Lena Vasquez led the first wave of human assault shuttles toward the Drachnary fleet. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Earth was a dangerous world where everything tried to kill everything else. Humans had learned to fight not just for victory, but for survival. "Remember your training," she told her soldiers over the communication system. "These aliens have never faced real predators. They're used to fighting species that evolved eating plants. We evolved eating each other." The assault shuttles moved like hunting wolves, working together to overwhelm the Drachnary point defense systems. Each shuttle carried 30 human soldiers, who had been selected for their ability to fight in hostile environments. Sergeant Dutch Hendricks checked his weapon one final time as his shuttle approached the Drachnary flagship. The rifle in his hands was designed to stop a charging Earth elephant. It fired depleted uranium rounds that could penetrate 20 inches of solid steel. 2 minutes to breach," the pilot announced. Dutch looked at his squad. These were not the typical soldiers that most species produced. They were hunters who had volunteered to risk their lives for people they had never met. Their ancestors had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being more dangerous than everything else on their world. The shuttle struck the Drachnary HULL and began cutting through the armor with plasma torches. The Drachneri had never experienced a boarding action before. Most species in the galaxy were too civilized to fight ship-to-ship combat. Breach successful. The pilot called out. Go, go. Dutch and his squad poured through the hole in the Drachneri hull. The corridors inside were designed for the 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors, but the humans used their smaller size to their advantage. Moving through spaces the Drachneri could not follow. The first Drachneri warrior they encountered was carrying a plasma, its rifle and wearing full body armor. It was twice the size of any human, and covered in natural scales that could stop most weapons. But he had never faced a creature that had evolved to kill things bigger than itself. Dutch's rifle fired 3 times in rapid succession. The uranium rounds punched through the Drachneri's armor and scales like they were made of paper. The alien warrior fell backward, his yellow eyes wide with shock and pain. Impossible, the dying Drachneri whispered. Your weapons are primitive. They should not penetrate my armor. Our weapons are primitive, Dutch agreed as he moved past the body. But they are designed to kill predators. You are just another predator. Across the Drachneri fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Human. Soldiers were boarding ship after ship, moving through the corridors like the apex predators they were. The Drachneri warriors, who had terrorized dozens of species, found themselves facing creatures that fought with a ferocity they had never imagined. On the bridge of his flagship, War Commander Vex watched his fleet being torn apart by an impossible enemy. Half his ships were already disabled or destroyed. The humans were not just winning, they were hunting his people like animals. Sir, his tactical officer reported with fear in his voice. Long-range sensors are detecting something massive approaching from the edge of the system. Vex looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. The signature was 10 times larger than any ship in either fleet. It was a Drachneri world killer, the ultimate weapon of his empire. Send the recall signal, he ordered. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. The human fleet had won this battle, but the war was about to become much more dangerous. Dr. Marcus Webb studied the captured Drachneri communications from his position aboard the human research vessel Discovery. The intercepted messages painted a clear picture of an enemy that had never faced coordinated resistance before. Each Drachneri ship operated independently, with commanders making their own decisions without consulting their allies. Fascinating, Webb muttered as he analyzed the data patterns. They fight like solitary hunters. Each ship is trying to claim the biggest kill for personal glory. Admiral Stonecrusher leaned over Webb's shoulder to examine the display. Can we use this against them? Absolutely. Look at these battle recordings from their previous conquests. The Drachneri always attack in straight lines, each ship trying to reach the enemy first. They have no concept of pack tactics or coordinated strikes. Webb pulled up a 3-dimensional model of the current battle. Our humans evolved as cooperative hunters. We instinctively work together to bring down prey larger than ourselves. The Drachneri evolved as individual predators who competed with each other for food. The Admiral smiled grimly. Then we teach them what happens when lone wolves meet a pack. Across the system, the massive Drachneri world killer moved steadily toward Kepler 4 for 2B. The ship was 5 miles, long and bristled with weapons capable of cracking a planet's crust. War Commander Vex had retreated his remaining fleet to escort the Super Weapon, believing that nothing could stand against its firepower. Lieutenant Nova Sterling sat in the cockpit of her experimental fighter craft. She was part of a 12-ship squadron that had been tasked with the impossible mission of disabling the World Killer before it could fire its main weapon. Control, this is Lightning Squadron. We are beginning our approach to the target. Copy. Lightning Leader. Remember, you need to reach the weapon control systems at the ship's core. Intelligence indicates a 30-second window between shield rotations. Nova checked her instruments one more time. The Raptor was designed using technology adapted from Earth's most agile predators. Its movement systems were based on the neural patterns of hunting hawks, allowing it to change direction instantly without losing speed. All units, remember your training. Hunt as a pack. Stay together and watch each other's backs. The 12 fighters moved through space like a school of fish, each pilot instinctively adjusting their position to maintain the formation. The Drachnary point defense systems opened fire, filling space with plasma bolts designed to stop conventional attack craft, but the human fighters did not move conventionally. They twisted and rolled through the defensive fire like living creatures, each pilot using reflexes honed by millions of years of predator evolution. The Drachnary gunners, used to targeting ships that flew in predictable patterns, could not adapt to the chaotic movement of the human craft. Nova's fighter dove toward the World Killer's hull, followed closely by her wingman. The massive ship's surface was covered in weapon batteries and sensor arrays. But Nova had memorized every detail from the intelligence briefings. Target acquired. Beginning penetration run. The Raptor's weapons were not designed to destroy the World Killer. Instead, they fired specialized electromagnetic pulses that could disrupt the ship's control systems. Nova needed to reach the weapon control center deep inside the vessel. Meanwhile, on the surface of Kepler 44b, Elder Mirren Voss watched the battle raging in the space above her world. Most of her people's domes had been destroyed, but the survivors had gathered in the deepest shelters they could find. Elder Jorik reported from his communication station. The humans are requesting tactical information about the Drachnary positions on our world. Mirren felt a spark of hope. The arrival of the human fleet had been like a miracle, but she had not dared to believe they could actually win against such overwhelming odds. Tell them everything we know. Our sensors have been tracking the Drachnary ground forces since they landed. What the Drachnary had not expected was that the peaceful Villani were not as helpless as they appeared. Their agricultural technology included sophisticated sensor networks that monitored every plant and animal on their world. These same sensors were now tracking every Drachnary soldier. The humans are asking if we can disrupt the Drachnary communications. Jorik continued. Mirren thought carefully. The Villani had always avoided violence, but these invaders were destroying everything her people had built. Sometimes, she realized, protecting the innocent required taking action against the guilty. Yes, she said firmly. Activate the agricultural disruption systems. We can interfere with their equipment. Maybe we can help the humans save our world. Across the planet's surface, Villani biotechnology began emitting electromagnetic pulses that interfered with Drachnary communications and targeting systems. The confused invaders found their weapons malfunctioning and their coordination breaking down. Commander? Alina Vasquez led her assault teams through the corridors of the Drachnary flagship. Her soldiers moved with deadly efficiency, using tactics that the enemy could not comprehend. While the Drachnary expected direct confrontation, the humans used stealth and misdirection. Squad 2 flanked them from the left. Squad 3 created distraction at the main corridor. Squad 1, we go through the ventilation system. The Drachnary warriors were individually stronger and better armored than humans, but they had never learned to fight as a coordinated unit. Each warrior tried to claim personal glory by charging the humans directly, making them easy targets for coordinated fire. Sergeant Dutch Hendricks planted explosive charges on a critical power junction. 30 seconds until this section loses power. All squads prepare for darkness. When the lights went out, the Drachnary were blinded and confused. But the humans had trained for exactly this situation. They moved through the darkness using infrared vision and sound location, skills developed by their ancestors who had hunted in the night. Target acquired. Firing. Dutch's rifle spoke 3 times, and another Drachnary warrior fell. The humans were not just winning through superior technology. They were winning because they understood something the Drachnary did not. True strength came not from individual power, but from working together toward a common goal. Dr. Webb analyzed the incoming battle data from his research station. The pattern was becoming clear. Every time the Drachnary tried to coordinate their attacks, the humans anticipated their moves and countered effectively. Admiral, I think I understand why we are so effective against them. The Drachnary have never faced cooperative predators before. Every species they have conquered was either herbivorous or consisted of solitary hunters like themselves. Admiral Stonecrusher studied the tactical display. They do not know how to fight a pack. Exactly. Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidation and individual combat prowess. They have no defense against enemies who sacrifice personal glory for group success. Above Kepler 4 for 2b, Lieutenant Nova Sterling's fighter squadron had penetrated deep into the World Killer's hull. The massive ship's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, but the human pilots worked together to navigate the complex structure. Lightning 3, cover my approach to the control center. Lightning 5, watch for secondary defenses. Nova's fighter reached the heart of the World Killer, where the planet-cracking weapons control systems were housed. The chamber was filled with Drachnary technicians who had never expected to face attack from inside their own ship, target locked, firing pulse weapons. The electromagnetic bursts disrupted every control system in the chamber. Alarms began wailing throughout the massive vessel as its primary weapon went offline. But even as the humans celebrated this victory, long-range sensors detected something that made Admiral Stonecrusher's blood run cold. More World Killer ships were approaching the system, and they were coming in force. Captain Phoenix Ramirez gripped the command chair of her ship, defiant as 3 more World Killer vessels emerged from hyperspace. Each one was as massive as the first, their dark holes bristling with planet-destroying weapons. The human fleet, despite their earlier victories, looked tiny against these approaching giants. Captain, Chief Engineer Buck Wallace called from his station, "The modifications to our fusion reactor are complete. But I have to warn you, this has never been tested before. We could destroy ourselves instead of the enemy," Phoenix studied the tactical display showing the approaching World Killers. In 30 minutes, they would be in position to fire their main weapons at Kepler 4 for 2b. The planet would crack like an egg, killing every Villani survivor and ending their ancient civilization forever. Buck, explain to me one more time how this is supposed to work. The engineer pulled up a holographic model of their modified reactor. We overload the fusion containment field at precisely the right moment and location. The explosion will create a controlled stellar formation that should disable all 4 World Killers simultaneously. Should? Phoenix raised an eyebrow. Well, Captain, the math works perfectly. But we are essentially trying to create a small star inside enemy formation. The timing has to be exact or we just become a very expensive firework. Phoenix looked around her bridge at the crew of the Defiant. These were volunteers who had signed up knowing this was likely a suicide mission. Each of them could have stayed safe aboard the other ships, but they had chosen to risk everything for people they had never met. Helm, set course for the center of the World Killer formation. Maximum speed, aye, Captain. Course laid in. Across the human fleet, Ambassador Cale Winter worked frantically at his diplomatic station. The battle had attracted attention from species throughout this region of space, and his sensors showed dozens of ships arriving at the edge of the system. Admiral Stonecrusher, this is Ambassador Winter. I have 17 different species requesting permission to join the battle against the Drachnary. The Admiral's voice crackled over the communication system. Are they offering military assistance? Most of them have no military vessels. They all have cargo ships and civilian craft. They want to help evacuate the Villani survivors. Admiral Stonecrusher felt a warm feeling in his chest. This was why humans had joined the galactic community. Not for conquest or profit, but to stand beside others who chose to do the right thing. Grant them permission to enter the system, but keep them away from the combat zone until we deal with those World Killers. On the surface of Kepler 4b, Elder Mirren Voss coordinated with the human ground forces. The Drachnary soldiers were retreating to their landing ships, but they were destroying everything they could reach as they withdrew. Human Commander Vasquez. Our biosensors detect Drachnary explosives placed throughout our remaining food storage facilities. They plan to poison our soil so nothing will ever grow here again. Elena Vasquez felt anger burn in her chest. It was one thing to fight soldiers, but destroying the ability of a peaceful species to feed itself was pure evil. Elder Voss, can your people guide my teams to those explosive devices? Yes, Commander. Our sensors can track every piece of foreign technology on our world. Then we stop them. No one destroys a civilization's future while humans are here to prevent it. Vasquez's soldiers spread across the planet, working with Villani guides to locate and disarm the Drachnary demolition charges. The humans moved with desperate speed, knowing that the battle in space would determine whether their efforts mattered. Sergeant Dutch Hendricks crawled through a damaged agricultural dome, following a young Villani named Kreese toward a cluster of explosive devices. The alien looked like a tall, slender human with large eyes and green-tinted skin. "The charges are placed around our seed vault," Kreese explained. "If they explode, we will lose genetic samples from 10,000 plant species. Our people will never recover from such a loss." Dutch examined the Drachnary explosives. They were designed to create a chemical reaction that would sterilize the soil for hundreds of years. This was not just military destruction, this was deliberate. "Genocide, not on my watch," he muttered, carefully disconnecting the triggering mechanisms in space. Captain Phoenix Ramirez's ship Defiant raced toward the center of the World Killer formation. The massive enemy vessels had begun charging their planet-cracking weapons, energy building in their forward arrays like captured lightning. "Captain, enemy fire incoming," the tactical officer reported. The World Killers had noticed the approaching human ship and were firing their secondary weapons. Plasma bolts the size of shuttlecraft streaked toward the Defiant, each one capable of vaporizing a normal vessel. But Phoenix had not survived 20 years of deep space exploration by being normal. Evasive maneuvers. "Show these oversized lizards how a real pilot flies." The Defiant twisted through the incoming fire like a leaf in a hurricane. Phoenix's reflexes, honed by years of navigating through asteroid fields and solar storms, kept them alive as they approached their target position. "Fusion reactor approaching critical overload," Buck Wallace reported. 30 seconds to controlled detonation. Dr. Marcus Webb monitored the approaching alien reinforcements from his research station. The ships arriving at the edge of the system represented over 20 different species, all coming to witness humanity stand against the Drachnary Empire. "Remarkable," he said to himself. "And one day humans have gone from unknown species to the galaxy's symbol of resistance against tyranny." Ambassador Winter's communication system was flooded with messages from the arriving alien vessels. Species that had suffered under Drachnary attacks for decades were offering whatever help they could provide. "Ambassador, this is Captain Zelt of the Corvani Republic. Our ships carry medical supplies and emergency food. How can we assist?" "This is Commander Youth of the Bendari Defense Force. We have evacuation ships standing by." "This is Elder Nash of the Prithvi Union. Our engineers are ready to help rebuild whatever the Drachnary have destroyed." Winter felt tears in his eyes as he realized what was happening. Humanity's willingness to fight for strangers had inspired an entire region of space to stand together against evil. Lieutenant Nova Sterling led her fighter squadron in desperate attacks against the World Killer's weapon systems. The massive ships were too well armored to destroy, but the humans could damage their targeting systems and slow their firing sequence. "Lightning Squadron, concentrate fire on the forward sensor arrays. If they cannot aim properly, they cannot hit the planet." The human fighters swarmed around the World Killers like angry insects, their weapons striking critical systems with surgical precision. The Drachnary point defenses tried to swat them down, but the pilots moved with the reflexes of Earth's apex. Predators Captain Phoenix Ramirez watched the countdown timer reach 10 seconds. Around her ship, the 4 World Killers were beginning to fire their planet-killing weapons. Beams of energy that could crack worlds began forming in their forward arrays. "This is for every peaceful species that ever sent a distress call," Phoenix said quietly. 5 seconds to detonation," Buck Wallace reported. 4, 3, 2, 1. The Defiant disappeared in a flash of light brighter than a star. The controlled fusion explosion expanded outward in a perfect sphere, washing over all. For World Killer ships simultaneously, their energy shields flared and failed, their weapon systems overloaded and exploded, and their massive hulls went dark as every system aboard them shut down. But as the light faded and the human fleet celebrated their impossible victory, long range sensors detected something that made Admiral Stonecrusher realize the real war was just beginning. Fleet Admiral Jackson Cross stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. Representatives from 47 different worlds had assembled aboard the human flagship, Retribution, to discuss the formation of the Mutual Defense Compact. The victory over the Drachneri had sent shockwaves throughout this region of space. Everyone wanted to understand how such a young species had accomplished the impossible. Senator Lisa Park addressed the assembled delegates, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "We gather today not as conquerors, but as protectors. The humans of Earth offer our military technology and tactical knowledge to any species willing to stand against those who would destroy peaceful civilizations." Ambassador Cale Winter watched the alien delegates carefully. Some showed excitement at the prospect of human protection, while others seemed worried about what humanity might expect in return. The galaxy had never seen a species offer military assistance without demanding territory or resources. Elder Mirren Voss rose from her seat among the Villani delegation. Her people had been given the honor of speaking first, as the species that humanity had risked everything to save. 3 days ago, my people faced extinction. We sent a desperate message into the void, not knowing if anyone would hear us or care about our fate. The humans answered our call, and they did so knowing they might die in the attempt. She paused, looking directly at Admiral Cross. "We have studied human history since your arrival. Your species has fought terrible wars among yourselves, yet you traveled across the galaxy to save strangers you had never met. This is not the behavior of a typical predator species." Dr. Marcus Webb stepped forward with a datapad containing his analysis of the recent battles. "Delegates, I have spent the past weeks studying the tactical recordings from our engagements with the Drachneri. The results show a clear pattern that explains human effectiveness in combat. The main display showed a three-dimensional model of the various battles. Every species the Drachneri had previously conquered fought as individuals, even when working together. They competed for personal glory and individual achievement. Humans fight as a unified organism, with each individual willing to sacrifice for the success of the group. A delegate from the Corvani Republic raised his hand. "Dr. Webb, are you suggesting that humans are naturally more cooperative than other species?" "Not more cooperative," Webb replied. "Differently cooperative. Most species develop cooperation to share resources or territory. Humans developed cooperation to hunt prey that was larger and more dangerous than themselves. This created a unique psychology where the group survival is more important than individual success." Commander Alina Vasquez addressed the military representatives in the audience. "We are prepared to share our combat techniques and weapon designs with any species willing to join the Defense Compact. But we must be clear about our expectations." She activated a holographic display showing the human fleet formation. "Human military doctrine is based on the principle that the strong must protect the weak. If you accept our assistance, you must agree to use it only for defensive purposes, and to come to the aid of other member species when they are threatened." The collective voice, an artificial intelligence representing several hive mind species, spoke through its mechanical translator. "We have observed human behavior since your arrival in this system. Your species exhibits a paradox that we find fascinating. You are simultaneously the most violent and most protective species we have encountered." Admiral Cross nodded thoughtfully. "Earth taught us that the universe is a dangerous place. Everything on our world evolved to survive in an environment where death could come from any direction at any time. But that same environment also taught us that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight for others." Senator Park presented the formal treaty documents to the assembled delegates. "The Mutual Defense Compact requires each member species to contribute according to their abilities. Those with industrial capacity will provide ships and equipment. Those with agricultural worlds will provide food and supplies. Those with research capabilities will share scientific knowledge. And what will humans provide?" asked a delegate from the Prithvi Union. "We will provide what we have always provided," Admiral Cross replied. "When someone sends a distress call into the void, we will answer. When peaceful species face extinction, we will stand between them and their destroyers. When the galaxy's children need protection, Earth's children will be there." A young officer entered the conference room and whispered urgently to Admiral Cross. The Admiral's expression grew serious as he listened to the report. "Delegates, We have just received long-range sensor data that changes everything we thought we knew about the Drachnary threat. The main display shifted to show a star map of the galactic core. Thousands of red dots moved slowly outward from the center, each representing a massive fleet. The Drachnary Empire was not expanding for conquest or resources. They were fleeing from something in the galactic core. Our victory over their advanced forces has attracted the attention of whatever drove them out of their home territory. Dr. Webb studied the sensor data with growing concern. Admiral, these energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Whatever is coming is not a species we have encountered before. The assembled delegates began talking among themselves in worried voices. The formation of the defense compact had suddenly become much more urgent. Elder Mirren Voss stood up again, her voice calm despite the frightening news. Then we must stand together. The humans have shown us that courage can overcome any odds. If something worse than the Drachnary is coming, we will face it as one united galaxy. Over the next several hours, 47 species signed the Mutual Defense Compact. The human fleet would serve as the core of the new Galactic Defense Force. With Earth designated as the military headquarters due to humanity's unique combination of advanced technology and predatory instincts, Admiral Cross established the Terran Protection Fleet, with human ships forming rapid response teams stationed throughout the member systems. Each team included representatives from allied species, creating mixed crews that combined human tactical abilities with alien scientific knowledge. Commander Vasquez began training programs for alien military personnel, teaching them human combat techniques and pack hunting strategies. The peaceful species learned to fight not as individuals, but as coordinated units working toward common goals. Lieutenant Nova Sterling was promoted to squadron leader and given command of the new multi-species fighter wing. Her pilots included representatives from 12 different worlds, all learning to fly with the aggressive unpredictability that made human combat tactics so effective. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 4 for 2B, the first Joint Patrol Fleet departed on its maiden mission. The ships represented a dozen different species, but they flew in formation patterns developed by human military strategists. Elder Mirren Voss delivered the dedication speech at the new Galactic Defense Council headquarters. When my people sent our desperate message into the darkness, we hoped for rescue. Instead, we found something better. We found protectors who would risk everything for strangers and who would teach us to protect others in turn. She looked out at the mixed crews preparing for their missions. The galaxy has learned that sometimes the most frightening predators are those who choose to be gentle until gentleness is no longer possible. The Terran Protection Fleet stands ready to answer the next distress call, wherever it may come from. The fleet departed for the Outer Rim, where long-range sensors had detected the first signs of the approaching threat from the galactic core. Whatever had driven the Drachnary from their home territory would soon discover that the galaxy now had new guardians. The lights of Nexus Prime Station flickered like dying stars against the black void of space. Ambassador Keel stood at the observation deck, her pale blue skin reflecting the soft glow of the navigation panels. The Valerian diplomat had served the Galactic Council for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like the reports flooding her communication system. 3 star systems had gone completely silent in the past month. Not just communications blackouts or technical failures, complete silence. As if entire worlds had simply stopped existing. Keels touched the holographic display with her long, slender fingers. The first system to go dark was New Haven, a mining colony with over 2 million inhabitants. The last transmission had been routine. Other reports, cargo manifests, children's birthday parties. Then nothing. Ambassador, you need to see this, called Lieutenant Brock from across the communication center. The young Draconian officer's scales were pale with worry. His species prided themselves on being fearless warriors, but even Brock looked shaken. Keels walked over to his station. The screen showed a partial transmission from the Kepler 442 system. Static filled most of the recording, but fragments of panicked voices came through. They're huge. The ships are alive. They're eating the stations. Send help, please. Anyone. They're consuming everything. The energy weapons aren't working. Nothing's working. And the transmission cut to silence. Keels felt a chill run down her spine. In 300 years of galactic peace, nothing like this had ever happened. The Council's protection had kept all member species safe from pirates, natural disasters, and territorial disputes. But this sounded like something else entirely. "Have you shown this to Commander Thax?" she asked. Brock's expression darkened. "He says it's probably equipment failure. It's maybe some pirates with stolen military tech. He won't authorize any investigation." Fleet's Commander Thax was the pride of the Draconian Empire. His species had once been great warriors, but centuries of peace had made them comfortable with routine patrols and ceremonial duties. Like most of the Council's military forces, they were trained for peacekeeping, not real warfare. Keels studied the star map again. The three dead systems formed a rough line pointing toward the galaxy's inner worlds. If something was moving through space, destroying everything in its path, it was heading toward the most populated sectors. "What about the other species?" asked. "Have the ethereals detected anything with their long-range sensors? They say their meditation networks show disturbances in the cosmic harmony, whatever that means," Brock replied. "The Crystalline Collective reports some strange energy readings, but they think it's just solar flare activity." Keels shook her head. The galaxy's most advanced species were so focused on their peaceful pursuits that they couldn't recognize a real threat. The ethereals spent their time in philosophical contemplation. The crystallines studied mathematical perfection. Oceanic Federation was busy with their underwater cities and poetry contests. None of them remembered how to fight. A real war. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Keels activated her personal communicator, and a hologram appeared, showing a gruff human face. The man looked tired and scared. "This is Captain Alex Torres of the merchant vessel Starbound," the message began. "I'm broadcasting this on all emergency frequencies. I just received a message from an old friend in the Outer Rim. Rico Vance, smuggler and information broker. He barely escaped the destruction of Haven Colony 3 weeks ago." The hologram flickered, as if the transmission was coming from very far away. Rico's message was short, but it scared me more than anything I've heard in 20 years of space. "Travel," he said, and I quote, "They eat planets, Alex. They eat everything. The ships are alive and they're learning. The Council won't listen because they can't believe it. But you humans know about monsters. You're our only hope." The message continued with coordinates and technical data, but Keels was already thinking, humans, the galaxy's strangest species. They came from a world so dangerous that most civilized beings couldn't survive there for more than a few hours. A planet where the weather could kill you, the animals hunted in packs, and even the plants were poisonous. The Council had spent decades trying to civilize humanity. They banned most of Earth's military technology, calling it primitive and unnecessarily destructive. Human weapons use chemical explosives and metal projectiles instead of clean energy beams. Their ships were built like flying fortresses instead of elegant exploration vessels. Most Council members found humans disturbing. They were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight. In a galaxy that had forgotten warfare, humanity seemed like a dangerous relic from a more violent age. But now, as Keels looked at the reports of entire worlds being consumed by unknown attackers, she wondered if the galaxy's attitude toward humans had been a mistake. She walked back to the main display and pulled up the long-range sensor data. Deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual movement in the void between star systems. Large objects moving at impossible speeds, but the energy signatures were unlike anything in the Council's databases. "Brock, I want you to run a full analysis of these sensor readings. Look for patterns, movement vectors, anything that might tell us what we're dealing with." "Yes, Ambassador. But Commander Thax has already ordered the sensor technicians to focus on normal shipping lanes. He says we're wasting resources on phantom readings." Keels closed her eyes and tried to think. 3 systems destroyed, millions of beings dead or missing. And the Council's military leadership was treating it like a minor technical problem. She opened her personal files and found Captain Torres's contact information. The human had sent his message through black market communication networks, which meant he was probably operating outside official channels. But right now, unofficial channels might be the only way to get real information. "I'm going to contact this human captain," she told Brock. "Keep monitoring the deep space sensors. If anything else happens, I want to know immediately." "Ambassador, are you sure that's wise?" "The Council has strict protocols about dealing with unregistered human vessels." Keels looked out at the stars. Again, somewhere out there, something was destroying entire civilizations. The Council's protocols seemed less important than survival. "Sometimes wisdom means breaking the rules, Lieutenant." As she prepared to send a message to Captain Torres, the main display lit up with an emergency alert. Another star system had gone silent. The Arcturus colonies, home to 12 million beings, had stopped transmitting. The pattern was becoming clear. Whatever was out there, it was moving faster now, consuming worlds at an increasing pace. And it was heading toward the galaxy's core, where billions of beings lived in peaceful ignorance of the approaching nightmare. Keels began typing her message to the human captain. The galaxy might not be ready to listen, but she was starting to believe that humanity might be the only species that could understand what they were truly facing in the depths of space. Something ancient and hungry continued its relentless advance toward the heart of civilization. The abandoned mining station floating near Titan looked like a graveyard of metal and broken dreams. Captain Alex Torres guided his ship through the debris field, following coordinates that had been passed through a dozen different smugglers and black market dealers. This was the kind of place where people met when they didn't want the Galactic Council. Watching, inside the station's main cargo bay, a strange group had gathered. Lena Vasquez sat cleaning her military rifle, her scarred face showing years of hard fighting. The former Earth Defense Marine had turned mercenary after the Council banned most human military units. Her reputation for getting impossible jobs done had spread across the outer colonies. Dr. Marcus Webb hunched over a portable laboratory setup, studying tissue samples that glowed with an eerie green light. The xenobiologist had been kicked out of the Council's research program for studying dangerous biological warfare applications. His crime had been trying to understand how different species could be used as weapons. Jorik, Steelborn, a massive man with arms like tree trunks, welded broken metal plates back together. The asteroid belt mining foreman had lost 3 mining stations and 200 workers to corporate wars. He understood that sometimes violence was the only way to protect what mattered. "So what's this about Torres?" Lena asked, not looking. Up from her weapon, Messi said something about the Council finally admitting they need us. Torres activated a holographic projector. Images of destroyed space stations and dead worlds filled the air above them. 5 star systems are completely gone. It's not just damaged or evacuated. Gone, like something ate them. Dr. Webb looked up from his samples. These tissue fragments came from a survivor ship. The crew was found floating in an escape pod near the Vega system. Most of them were dead, but the ship's computer had recorded everything. The hologram changed to show massive organic shapes moving through space. The ships looked alive, their surfaces pulsing like beating hearts. Smaller creatures swarmed around them like insects around a hive. The survivors called them Devourers. Torres continued. They attack without warning, consume everything organic and metal, then move on. The Council's energy weapons can't hurt them. Their hulls adapt to any energy-based attack within minutes. Jorik stopped welding and stared at the images. Big are these things. The largest ones are bigger than space stations, maybe bigger than small moons. And they're heading toward the inner systems. Alina finally looked up from her rifle. What does this have to do with us? The Council made it clear they don't want human military help. We're too primitive for their civilized warfare. Torres smiled grimly. That's about to change. Ambassador Keels contacted me yesterday. She's convinced some Council members that they need to try something different. Today, she's presenting a proposal to the full Council session. The group exchanged looks. The idea of the Council asking for human military help seemed impossible. For 300 years, they had worked to limit human weapons and tactics. Earth's ships were required to carry only defensive systems. Human soldiers could only serve in peacekeeping roles. There's more, Torres said. Dr. Webb has been studying the devourer tissue samples. Tell them what you found. Webb activated his own display, showing cellular structures that moved and changed shape. These organisms are unlike anything in our databases. We can adapt their biology in real time to counter different types of attacks. Energy weapons cause them to develop energy-resistant armor. Radiation makes them stronger. Poison feeds them. But Alina sensed there was more to the story. But they struggle with chaos. Their adaptation takes time and requires patterns to analyze. Random, unpredictable attacks confuse their biological responses. Chemical explosives, kinetic weapons, guerrilla tactics, all the things the Council calls primitive warfare, might be exactly what we need. Jorik laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Mean our barbaric human weapons might actually work? It's possible. The Devourers have been consuming advanced civilizations for who knows how long. They've learned to counter sophisticated energy weapons and organize military tactics. But Earth's weapons and strategies might be something they've never encountered before. Torres looked at each of them. Here's the plan. In 2 hours, Ambassador Keels is presenting evidence to the Council and asking them to lift the restrictions. On human military assets, if they agree, we need to be ready to prove that humans can do what their advanced species cannot. And if they don't agree, Alina asked, then we do it anyway. Because if these Devourers reach the core worlds, billions of people are going to die. The group spent the next hour planning. Alina would contact her mercenary networks and start assembling combat units. Jorik would reach out to the mining unions and get access to industrial explosives and heavy equipment. Dr. Webb would continue analyzing Devourer biology to find weaknesses as they worked. Torres received a message from Ambassador Keels. Council session was beginning on Nexus Prime. Ambassador Keels stood before the greatest gathering of species in galactic history. The chamber was a marvel of architecture, with floating platforms for each species' representatives. Ethereals glowed with soft light on their crystal pedestals. The draconian delegation sat in formation, their scales gleaming. Oceanic representatives floated in water-filled spheres. Honored delegates, Keels began. We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. The evidence is undeniable. 5-star systems have been completely consumed by an unknown enemy.
Ow.
Millions of our citizens are dead or missing. Commander Thax stood up from the military section. Ambassador Keels, while these incidents are concerning, we must not panic. Our preliminary investigations suggest equipment failures or perhaps organized pirate activity. The Council's military forces are more than capable of handling any threat. With respect, Commander, your preliminary investigation is wrong. Keels activated the holographic display, showing the recordings from the destroyed systems. These are not pirates. These are biological weapons of unprecedented scale and intelligence.
Ow.
The chamber filled with sounds of distress as delegates saw the images of devourer ships consuming entire space stations. The elegant ethereals dimmed their light in horror. The crystalline beings' geometric forms trembled. What you're seeing, Keels continued, has adapted to counter every weapon system in our arsenal. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, all useless. These creatures learn and adapt faster than we can modify our tactics. A delegate from the Oceanic Federation spoke up, her voice bubbling through the water sphere's communication system. What do you propose we do, Ambassador? Our scientists say these creatures are impossible to defeat with current technology. Keels took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either save the galaxy or end her career. I propose we activate dormant human military assets and give them temporary authority to engage these threats using their conventional warfare doctrine. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. The ethereal's light flickered wildly. Several crystalline beings actually cracked from stress. Commander Thax's voice cut through the noise. Absolutely not. Human military doctrine is barbaric and unpredictable. Their weapons are crude and destructive. Giving them military authority would be like releasing wild animals in a peaceful garden. Commander Keels replied calmly, Our peaceful garden is being eaten by monsters. Perhaps it's time to call on those who know how to fight monsters. Dr. Nex, the chief scientist from the Ethereal Collective, floated forward. Ambassador Keel's human warfare is based on destruction and chaos. How can such primitive methods succeed where our advanced technology has failed? Because came a new voice from the chamber's communication system. Sometimes primitive methods work better than advanced ones. Dr. Webb's voice filled the chamber as his analysis appeared on the main display. The devourer organisms adapt by studying and countering organized patterns. They've encountered thousands of advanced civilizations and learned to defeat their sophisticated weapons. But they've never faced the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human warfare. The chamber fell silent as delegates studied Webb's biological analysis. The data was clear. Devourer adaptation required time and pattern recognition. Chaos and randomness created gaps in their defensive systems. Commander Thax stood again. Even if this analysis is correct, unleashing human military power could destabilize the entire galactic order. We've spent centuries creating peace through controlled, civilized conflict resolution. Peace, Keels asked quietly. Commander, 5-star systems are gone. The Centauri sector is next in the Devourer's path. It's home to over 1 billion beings. How many civilizations must die before we admit that our peaceful methods aren't working? The voting began immediately. Species after species cast their decisions. The Draconians voted against, fearing loss of military prestige. The Ethereals voted for, influenced by Dr. Webb's scientific evidence. Crystallines calculated probabilities and voted for. The Oceanics debated for an hour before voting against. As the votes were counted, long-range sensors detected new movement in the outer systems. Devourers were accelerating, their massive bioships heading directly toward the Centauri colonies. The final vote came down to a single delegate, Ambassador Keels herself, representing the Valerian diplomatic corps. I vote yes, she said simply. May the ancestors forgive us if we're wrong, and save us if we're right. The motion passed by 1 vote. For the first time in 3 centuries, human military assets were authorized for unrestricted combat operations in the cargo bay near Titan. Captain Torres received the message. Alina smiled grimly as she checked her weapons. Jorik powered up his mining equipment. Dr. Webb sealed his biological samples. The galaxy had called on its Deathworlders. Now they had to prove they were worth the risk. Asterisk. The UES Retribution looked like a flying fortress compared to the sleek council ships around it. Captain Alex Torres stood on the bridge of the 200-year-old dreadnought, watching his ragtag fleet prepare for battle. 23 ships in total, none of them designed for what they were about to face. Captain, we're getting readings on the Devourer fleet, reported Lieutenant Sam Blake from the sensor station. They're bigger than the reports suggested. The main screen lit up with an image that made even the hardened human crew fall silent. The lead bioship was massive beyond imagination, its organic hull pulsing with dark energy. Smaller creatures, each the size of a destroyer, moved around it like a living cloud. How big is that thing? Torres asked. Computer estimates it's roughly the size of Luna, sir. Maybe bigger. Commander Lisa Hartwell's voice crackled over the communication system. From her experimental Corvette Stormcrow, Alex, my sensors are showing at least 50 smaller bioships. This isn't a raiding party. This is an invasion fleet.
Ow.
Torres looked around his bridge crew. They were volunteers from across human space, former military officers who had been forced into retirement by council regulations, merchant captains who had lost friends to pirate attacks, engineers who had spent decades maintaining ships instead of building weapons. All ships. This is Torres. We knew this wasn't going to be easy. The Council's best fleets couldn't scratch these things with energy weapons. But we've got something they don't have. What's that, sir? Came a voice from one of the mining ships. Know how to fight dirty? The Devourer fleet moved with disturbing grace through space. The massive lead ship, which the humans had designated Alpha Prime, seemed to scan the approaching human vessels. Smaller bioships broke away from the main formation, moving to intercept. Lena, you ready? Torres called to the mercenary commander. On the converted cargo hauler Warhammer, born ready, Captain, My boys are loaded for bear with everything we could carry. Industrial explosives, mining charges, and some special surprises we picked up from the asteroid belt. Lena Vasquez checked her tactical display. Her ship carried 40 mercenaries, armed with weapons that the Council had banned decades ago. Chemical explosives, kinetic rifles, and close combat gear designed for boarding actions. Everything the civilized galaxy considered too brutal for modern warfare. "Jorik, how are your mining crews doing?" Torres asked. The gruff voice of Jorik Steelborn came through the communication system, ready to show these aliens what real work looks like. "We've got enough industrial charges to crack an asteroid in half. If these bioships can eat energy, let's see how they handle good old-fashioned explosions." Dr. Marcus Webb was aboard the research vessel Galileo, monitoring the approaching enemy fleet. His sensors were tracking the bioships' behavior patterns, looking for weaknesses in their adaptive systems. "Captain Torres, I'm seeing something interesting. The bioships are trying to scan our weapons, but they seem confused. Their adaptation systems are designed to counter energy-based attacks. They don't know what to make of our chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. Good. Let's keep them confused. All ships, implement tactical plan. Chaos." No predictable attack patterns. Make it impossible for them to figure out what we're doing. The human fleet spread out in seemingly random directions. Mining ships accelerated toward the enemy using gravity slings around asteroids. Military vessels feinted attacks, then changed course at the last second. Merchant ships released cargo, containers that drifted on ballistic trajectories. The first bioship to engage was roughly the size of a council cruiser. Its surface rippled with organic sensors as it approached the mining vessel Iron Mountain. The alien ship fired living projectiles that moved like guided missiles. "This is Captain Roy Nash on Iron Mountain. Taking fire from organic weapons. They're trying to latch onto our hull. Use the mining charges, Roy. Close-range detonation." Nash's ship released a spread of industrial explosives, each one timed to detonate at different intervals. To bioships. Surface began to adapt, hardening against the first explosion. But before it could complete the process, 6 more charges exploded in rapid succession. The alien vessel shuddered, its organic hull torn open by the chaotic sequence of explosions. Green fluid leaked into space as the bioship's adaptive systems struggled to cope with the random damage patterns. Direct hit. The mining charges work. The bioship is damaged and pulling back. But the victory was short-lived. More bioships swarmed toward the human fleet, and Alpha Prime began to move forward with terrifying purpose. Elena's ship, Warhammer, engaged to smaller bioships simultaneously. Her mercenaries used magnetic grapples to attach explosive charges directly to the alien hulls. The bioships tried to adapt, growing armor plates over the attachment points. But Elena's people detonated the charges before the adaptation could complete. "This is like fighting in zero-G construction sites," she reported. "These things adapt fast, but they need time. Hit them quick and random, and they can't keep up." Commander Hartwell's corvette Stormcrow tested the new kinetic weapons against a medium-sized bioship. The alien vessel's hull hardened against the first kinetic rounds, but the follow-up shots used different materials and velocities. The kinetic rounds are working, but barely. These things learn fast. We need to keep changing our approach. Dr. Webb was monitoring the battle from his research ship. tracking how the bioships adapted to different attack methods. Captain Torres, I'm seeing a pattern. The bioships share information through some kind of biological network. When one learns to counter an attack, they all learn. How long does the learning process take? For energy weapons, almost instantly. For our weapons, about 30 to 40 seconds. But once they adapt, the adaptation spreads to the entire fleet within minutes. Torres realized the terrible math of their situation. The human fleet had maybe one chance to use each type of weapon before the entire Devourer fleet became immune to it. After that, their technological advantage would disappear. Listen carefully. We've got maybe one good shot with each weapon type before they adapt. Make every shot count. The battle became a desperate race against biological adaptation. Human ships fired nuclear torpedoes that punched through bioship holes before the aliens could develop radiation shielding. Mining crews detonated shaped charges that focused explosive force in ways the bioships couldn't predict. Alina led the most dangerous part of the operation. Her boarding teams used modified construction mechs to break into damaged bioships, planting nuclear charges inside their organic cores. This is Alina. I'm inside one of these things. It's like being inside a living creature. The walls are moving. And there's some kind of immune system trying to attack us. Plant the charges and get out, Torres ordered. Already done. 30 seconds to detonation. The bioship exploded from within, its organic structure unable to contain the nuclear explosion. But even as it died, the other bioships were learning. From its destruction, developing internal defenses against boarding actions, Alpha Prime had remained at the edge of the battle, watching and learning. Now, it moved forward with deadly purpose. Its massive bulk dwarfed even the largest human ships. Its surface was covered with new adaptations based on everything it had observed. Captain Alpha Prime is targeting us directly, reported Lieutenant Blake. The massive bioship fired a weapon unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of living projectiles, it released a cloud of organic matter that moved like an intelligent swarm. Evasive maneuvers, all power to engines. The Retribution twisted through space, trying to avoid the approaching bioweapon. But the organic swarm followed every move, learning their evasion patterns and adapting its approach. Sir, the swarm is going to hit us in 20 seconds. Torres looked at his crew. They had fought well, but they were facing an enemy that learned from every attack, every maneuver, every strategy. The bioships were becoming immune to human weapons with each passing minute. All ships prepare for ramming speed. If we can't outthink them, we'll outstubborn them. Captain, that's suicide. Hartwell protested over the communication system. Maybe, but it's also something they won't expect. These bioships have been fighting advanced civilizations for who knows how long. But I bet they've never faced opponents crazy enough to ram them with nuclear warheads. The human fleet began its final charge toward Alpha Prime. Mining ships, military vessels, and merchant craft all accelerated toward the massive bioship. Some carried nuclear warheads, loaded with industrial charges. A few were simply planning to ram at maximum velocity. Alpha Prime's surface rippled with confusion as its sensors tried to understand what the humans were doing. The bioship's adaptation systems were designed to counter weapons and tactics, not suicidal desperation. As the human ships closed the distance, Torres made a decision that would change everything. He activated the fleet's emergency broadcast system, sending human military data to every species in the galaxy. This is Captain Torres to all Council forces. We're transmitting our weapon specifications, tactical doctrines, and combat strategies. Use them. Modify them. These bioships can adapt to energy weapons, but they struggle with chaos and unpredictability. The transmission reached Council fleets across the galaxy. Draconian commanders began retrofitting their ships with kinetic weapons. Crystalline mathematicians calculated optimal firing patterns for chemical explosives. Even the peaceful ethereals started learning the human art of unpredictable warfare. But in the Centauri system, the battle was reaching its climax. Alpha Prime fired everything it had at the approaching human fleet. filling space with organic weapons and biomatter clouds. Torres watched his ships disappear one by one under the massive alien assault. But each human vessel that died bought precious seconds for the others to get closer to their target. The Retribution shuddered as organic weapons struck its hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems failed. Torres kept the ship on course toward Alpha Prime's massive bulk. 10 seconds to impact, reported Lieutenant Blake. It's been an honor serving with you all, Torres said to his crew. ***, the explosion of the UES Retribution lit up space like a dying star. Captain Torres had rammed his ship into Alpha Prime's hull, detonating every nuclear warhead aboard. The massive bioship shuddered, its organic surface torn open by the blast. But it continued moving forward. On the bridge of the Stormcrow, Commander Lisa Hartwell watched the sacrifice of her friend, with tears in her eyes. But there was no time. To mourn, the battle was far from over, and something incredible was happening across the galaxy. Commander, we're receiving transmission confirmations from over 40 different species, reported her communication officer. They're all requesting copies of our tactical data. Human military broadcasts had reached every corner of civilized space. Captain Torres' final transmission was spreading like wildfire through the Council's communication networks. And species that had never worked together were suddenly sharing weapons technology and battle plans. Ma'am, the Draconian Third Fleet is requesting specifications for kinetic weapons. They want to retrofit their ships immediately. Hartwell smiled grimly. Commander Thax had spent years calling human weapons primitive. Now his people were begging to learn how to use them. Send them everything we have. And patch me through to the Crystalline Collective. Their mathematical precision, combined with our chaos theory, might give us an edge. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate and desperate. The elegant Draconian cruisers began installing crude kinetic cannons alongside their energy weapons. The crystalline beings used their geometric perfection to calculate optimal explosion patterns for human style. Chemical charges. On the ethereal homeworld, the peaceful philosophers did something they had never done before. They began studying the art of war. Their telepathic abilities allowed them to coordinate chaotic battle strategies across vast distances. Even the Oceanic Federation, despite their peaceful nature, began converting their exploration vessels into fighting ships. They're fluid-based. Technology proved surprisingly effective at creating unpredictable weapon systems. But the most surprising response came from Dr. Marcus Webb aboard the research vessel Galileo. While the battle raged around him, he had been analyzing captured devourer tissue samples. What he discovered changed everything. This is Dr. Webb to all human vessels. I've made a breakthrough. The devourers aren't just random destroyers. Running from something, Elena Vasquez, still leading boarding parties against the smaller bioships, paused in her assault. The tissue samples show signs of extreme adaptation stress. These creatures have been modifying themselves for millions of years, not to attack, but to survive. They're refugees, not conquerors. Webb's research data flooded the communication networks. The devourer bioships weren't just consuming matter for food or resources. They were collecting genetic information, storing the biological patterns of every species they encountered. They're trying to preserve something, Webb continued. Every species they've consumed, every world they've stripped bare, they've kept records of it all. They're like a living library of extinct civilizations. Commander Hartwell processed this information while dodging organic weapons fire. If they're preservers, why are they destroying everything? Because they're terrified. Deep space sensors are picking up something approaching from the galactic edge. Something that makes the Devourer fleet look like a scouting party. The revelation sent shockwaves through the combined human and council forces. If the Devourers were running from something worse, what did that mean for the galaxy? Admiral Kate Morrison chose that moment to arrive with the Earth Defense Force's hidden fleet. The EU's vengeance appeared at the edge of the system, followed by dozens of ships that officially didn't exist. For 3 centuries, Earth had been building a secret deep space navy, hidden from Council oversight. This is Admiral Morrison to all forces. We've been monitoring the situation. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do best. The Earth fleet was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The ships were built for war, not exploration. They carried weapons that had been banned for centuries: nuclear torpedo launchers, kinetic bombardment systems, and experimental energy weapons that combined human engineering with captured alien technology. "Admiral, we've got a problem," Hartwell reported. "The Devourers aren't our real enemy. They're running from something worse, I know, Commander. Oh, our long-range sensors detected it an hour ago. Multiple objects approaching from dark space. They're big, they're fast, and they're not organic." The combined fleet began a new strategy. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers, they started trying to communicate with them. The Ethereals used their telepathic abilities to reach out to the bioships. Collective consciousness. Elena's boarding teams found themselves in a strange situation. Instead of planting explosives, they were trying to establish communication with the bioship's internal systems. The organic corridors pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost like a language. "This is Elena. I'm inside one of the medium bioships. The walls are showing me pictures. Images of dead galaxies, consumed worlds, and something dark. Moving between the stars." Dr. Webb worked frantically to decode the biological communication system. The Devourers had been trying to warn the galaxy, but their method of communication involved consuming and analyzing other species. They couldn't understand why the galaxy's inhabitants were resisting their attempts to preserve them. "I've got partial translation working," Webb reported. "The bioships are showing us their memories. They've been fleeing across the universe for millions of years. Their original galaxy was consumed by something they called the Void Reapers. The name sent chills through every species in the fleet. The Void Reapers were ancient machines that traveled between galaxies, consuming all life and converting it into energy. They had destroyed dozens of galaxies across the universe. And now they were approaching the Milky Way. Admiral Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic history. All human vessels prepare to offer alliance terms to the Devourer fleet. We're not fighting destroyers anymore. We're fighting fellow survivors." The negotiation took place in the most unlikely setting imaginable. Inside Alpha Prime's organic command center, Captain Torres had somehow survived the nuclear explosion. His ship's bridge had been consumed by the bioship's healing systems. But instead of killing him, the organic matter had kept him alive. Elena led a rescue team into the massive bioship's heart. They found Torres connected to a web of organic cables. He was conscious, but changed. His mind linked to the Devourer collective consciousness. "Elena, I can see what they've seen," Torres whispered. "Entire galaxies turned to dust. Billions of species extinct. The Void Reapers don't just kill. They erase everything that ever existed." Through Torres' connection, the humans began to understand the full scope of the threat. The Devourers had been collecting genetic samples and cultural records not out of malice, but out of desperate hope. They were trying to preserve something of the civilizations they encountered before the Void Reapers. Arrived, Dr. Webb analyzed the new data flowing through the biolink. The Void Reapers will arrive in approximately 18 hours. Their advanced scouts are already entering the outer system. Admiral Morrison coordinated the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. Human weapons specialists worked alongside draconian engineers to modify bioship hulls with kinetic armor. Crystalline mathematicians calculated optimal formation patterns for the combined organic and mechanical fleet. The Ethereals established permanent telepathic links between human commanders and Devourer consciousness nodes. For the first time in millions of years, the bioships had allies who understood their mission. Elena emerged from Alpha Prime carrying genetic samples from a dozen extinct species. The Devourers have been carrying the last remnants of destroyed civilizations for millions of years. They're not monsters. They're the galaxy's memory. The combined fleet began preparing for the real battle. Human ships integrated Devourer bioarmor that could adapt to energy weapons. The bioships installed human-designed kinetic weapons that could punch through mechanical armor. Commander Hartwell found herself in command of a hybrid cruiser, half human technology and half living bioship. The organic systems responded to her thoughts while the mechanical weapons provided the destructive power humanity was known for. "This is impossible," she muttered, watching her ship's living hull repair battle damage in real time. Impossible. Is what humans do best, Admiral Morrison replied over the communication system. We've got 17 hours to turn this mixed fleet into a fighting force capable of stopping galaxy-killing machines. The preparation was unlike anything in recorded history. Human engineers learned to work with living metal. Devourer bioships practiced formations with mechanical vessels. The peaceful species of the Council found themselves learning not just human weapons, but human philosophy. Jorik, Steelborn, the mining foreman, summed up the situation perfectly. We're about to fight machines that eat galaxies, using ships that are half alive and half dead, with allies we were trying to kill yesterday. This is either going to be the greatest victory in history or the most spectacular failure. As the combined fleet took position at the edge of the system, long-range sensors detected the approaching Void Reaper advance force. The machines were vast, their hulls reflecting no light. Moving through space like holes in reality itself, Admiral Morrison opened communication to the entire fleet. In 18 hours, we face an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations. But they've never faced Deathworlders fighting alongside the very species they thought they had already conquered. Today we show the universe that some things are worth dying for. The Void Reapers emerged from dark space like nightmares made real. Their massive forms blocked out entire star fields, mechanical constructs so large they seemed to bend reality around them. Admiral Kate Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Vengeance as her sensors tried to measure the approaching enemy. Fleet! How many? She asked her tactical officer. 17 confirmed contacts, Admiral. The largest one is roughly the size of a small planet. The energy readings are off our scales. Captain Torres, still connected to Alpha Prime's biosystems, felt the terror radiating from the Devourer collective consciousness. Through the organic link, he experienced memories spanning millions of years, galaxy after galaxy consumed by these same machines, entire civilizations erased as if they had never existed. They don't just destroy, he reported to the combined fleet. They unmake things. Every planet they touch becomes empty space. Every species they encounter is deleted from existence. Commander Lisa Hartwell gripped the controls of her hybrid ship, feeling the living hull pulse with nervous energy. Around her, the strangest fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside organic bioships. Crystalline mathematical vessels moved in perfect formation with chaotic draconian fighters. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison. We face an enemy that has never been defeated. But they've also never faced what we've become. Today, we fight not as separate species, but as one galaxy united. The Void Reapers moved with terrifying purpose. Their lead ship, a construct the size of Earth's moon, began charging weapons that glowed with the light of dead stars. Smaller machine units, each larger than a council cruiser, swarmed around it like mechanical insects. Elena Vasquez prepared her boarding teams for what might be the last battle of their lives. Her mercenaries carried weapons designed by human engineers and grown by Devourer biotechnology. Chemical explosives that could adapt and change, kinetic rounds that learned from each shot fired. This is Elena to all boarding parties. We're going into machines that have been killing for millions of years, but we've got something they don't expect. We've got humans who refuse to stay dead, and aliens who've learned how to fight dirty. Dr. Marcus Webb worked frantically in his laboratory, now integrated with Devourer biosystems. He was creating something that had never existed before, a biological virus designed to attack mechanical systems. The hybrid technology was beyond anything either species could have created alone. Admiral, I've got a weapon ready. It's a biomechanical virus that should confuse their adaptive systems. But I need to get it into their central command matrix. The first exchange of fire lit up the void between galaxies. The Void Reapers launched weapons that tore holes in space itself, while the combined fleet responded with everything from nuclear missiles to living projectiles that thought for themselves. Jorik Steelborn commanded a mining ship that had been transformed into a mobile weapon platform. His industrial charges were now guided by crystalline mathematics and powered by ethereal energy manipulation. The explosions they created were works of art and destruction combined. Direct hit on Reaper Unit 7, he reported. But it's already adapting. The whole damage is healing itself. The battle quickly became a nightmare of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The Void Reapers modified their defenses to counter human kinetic weapons, so the Devourer bioships grew new types of projectiles. When the machines learned to absorb energy attacks, the crystalline vessels created geometric patterns that focused explosive force in ways that couldn't be predicted. Alpha Prime moved through the battle like a living mountain, its massive bulk, absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any normal ship. Captain Torres, linked to its consciousness, felt every hit like a physical blow. But he also felt something else. Hope. The Void Reapers are confused, he reported. They've never encountered biological and mechanical cooperation before. Their analysis systems can't handle our hybrid tactics. Admiral Morrison seized the moment. All ships, implement maximum chaos protocol. No patterns, no predictable attacks. Make it impossible for them to adapt. The galaxy's fleet became a storm of controlled madness. Human ships fired randomly while Draconian vessels provided precision strikes. Oceanic craft flowed like liquid metal, while ethereal vessels struck with telepathic coordination. The Devourers grew new weapons in real time, adapting to each moment of the battle. But the Void Reapers were learning too. Their massive command ship began producing new types of machine units, each one designed to counter specific alliance tactics. The battle was becoming a race between organic adaptation and mechanical evolution. Elena's boarding parties launched their desperate assault on the enemy command ship. Using biomechanical transport pods grown by the Devourers, they penetrated the machine's hull and found themselves in a nightmare landscape of grinding gears and pulsing energy conduits. "This place is like the inside of a giant machine," she reported. "But it's alive somehow. The walls are watching us." Dr. Webb's virus was ready, but delivering it required getting to the very heart of the enemy command structure. Elena's teams fought through mechanical defenders that learned from every human they killed, adapting their tactics with each encounter. The battle outside reached a critical point. The combined fleet was holding its own, but barely. More Void Reaper units were arriving from dark space, and the Alliance ships were taking severe casualties. Commander Hartwell made a decision that would be remembered. Throughout galactic history, her hybrid ship, now more bioorganism than machine, began a suicide run toward the largest Void Reaper construct. "This is Hartwell to all vessels. I'm going to ram the command ship. The biosystems think they can survive the impact and deliver Dr. Webb's virus directly to their core." "Elisa, don't do this," Admiral Morrison ordered. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way, Admiral. Besides, someone needs to show these machines what human stubbornness looks like." Hartwell's ship accelerated toward the massive enemy construct, its living hull adapting in real time to absorb the incoming defensive fire. The Void Reaper tried everything in its arsenal, but the hybrid vessel kept coming, its biosystems healing, damage faster than it could be inflicted. The impact was spectacular. Hartwell's ship penetrated deep into the enemy construct's core, its biosystems spreading through the mechanical infrastructure like a living infection. Dr. Webb's virus began its work, turning the machine's own adaptive systems against itself. Elena's boarding teams reached the central command matrix just as the virus took hold. The mechanical systems began to fail, their perfect logic corrupted by biological chaos. But the team faced one final challenge: the machine's central intelligence, a construct that had supervised the destruction of entire galaxies. "This is bigger than anything we've faced," Elena reported. "It's like fighting a god made of metal and math." Captain Torres, still linked to Alpha Prime, made his own desperate choice. He severed his connection to the bioship and transferred his consciousness directly into the enemy machine, carrying Dr. Webb's virus with him. "Torres, what are you doing?" Admiral Morrison demanded. "What humans do best, Admiral. I'm refusing to give up." Inside the machine consciousness, Torres faced the collective intelligence of the Void Reapers. It was ancient beyond measure, efficient beyond imagination, and completely without mercy. But it had never encountered something like human determination combined with biological adaptation. The virus spread through the machine networks, but Torres was the carrier. The human element that made the biological weapon truly chaotic. His memories of Earth, of friendship, of sacrifice, infected the cold logic of the machines with something they couldn't process: hope. The effect rippled through the entire Void Reaper fleet. Their perfect coordination broke down as each unit struggled to understand the biological chaos spreading through their networks. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision began to malfunction and collide with each other. Admiral Morrison seized the opportunity. All ships, full assault. They're vulnerable now. The combined fleet pressed their attack with everything. They had human nuclear warheads tore through weakened machine hulls. Devourer bioweapons found gaps in adaptive armor. The peaceful species of the galaxy unleashed weapons they had never dreamed of using. But the greatest victory was won in the digital realm. Torres, his consciousness scattered through the enemy network, began a final act of sabotage. He planted human memories in the machine databases, images of children playing, lovers embracing, friends sacrificing themselves for each other. The Void Reapers, designed to process and eliminate all organic life, couldn't handle the complexity of human emotion. Their systems crashed one by one as they tried to analyze feelings that had no logical framework. The enemy command ship exploded in a cascade of failing systems. The other Void Reaper units, cut off from their central control, began to shut down or flee back into dark space. As the battle ended, the survivors counted their losses. Captain Torres was gone. His consciousness dissolved into the machine networks. Commander Hartwell had died in her ramming attack. Thousands of brave beings from dozens of species had given their lives, but the galaxy survived. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Keels stood before a changed galactic council. Humans now sat as equal members alongside species that had once considered them primitive. The Devourers, no longer destroyers but guardians of galactic memory, shared their preserved knowledge with all who wished to learn. Alina Vasquez founded the first interspecies military academy, teaching combined tactics to the next generation of galactic defenders. Dr. Webb continued his research, developing new biomechanical technologies that combine the best of organic and artificial intelligence. Admiral Morrison became the first human to command a truly galactic fleet, with ships and crews from every member species. The galaxy had learned that diversity was strength, and that sometimes the most primitive methods were the most effective. The story ended not with conquest, but with understanding. The galaxy had faced its greatest threat and survived by becoming something new, a unified civilization that celebrated both peace and the capacity for war. And somewhere in the depths of space, monitoring stations watched for new threats, crewed by beings who had learned the most important lesson of all. When the galaxy cries out for help, there will always be those willing to answer with steel and fire.